Okay, so I hope this is live. As per usual, I'm actually um, streaming this out on YouTube, or actually, unfair to say, I've actually gone and recorded an in-depth version of this to stick onto YouTube. I'm still testing what we're doing with Tradingview, and I just wanted to make sure that the link to the Tradingview one connects to YouTube properly. So I'm going to keep this one pretty short. So as the title suggests, I just want to simplify what I'm actually looking at with Bitcoin. I get this question over and over and over again, and I just want to highlight what I'm seeing. So let's go first of all with the Elliott count. If you're not familiar with Elliott, it's basically 5 impulsive moves followed by 3 corrective moves, and that's really all you really need to know in terms of what I'm trying to show for this particular point. So in essence, let's start from here. We're going to go 0 to 1, back down for the 2, up for potentially a 3, and I'll tell you why potentially in a second, 4 and 5. So just ignore the 5 for now. I'm going to change this to white, it's obvious. Okay, so let's assume that this is the current monthly move. Now, there's some logic as to why I think potentially the 3 hasn't quite yet been completed. And there's also logic as to why the 3 could easily be completed. So I think, again, just highlighting where we are in the cycle, in the roadmap, as I call it, I go back to some moves that I was calling back in March this year. The Elliott roadmap was actually highlighted towards the weekly, and I'll come into this in a second. But ultimately, just to kind of show where we are now, if we look at this as a monthly move, right, forget all the extension levels and the kind of extensions to where we could be, the retracements to where we are. All I'm looking for is simplified logic. Now, the first problem I have at the moment is that we would usually see 5 waves up, 3 waves down, and therefore I'd like to see something like this. Now, in this particular move, we would actually notice that this is corrective, and this technically would be corrective here. So we've got impulsive moves in, which I'd like to see some kind of move from there up, down, etc., etc. But because we are now starting from the 2 on a weekly time frame, my 2 would come from this low, making a new 0 here. And then we'd have to go 1, 2, up for 3, 4, and 5, which is one of the reasons I feel personally that this is actually still making a monthly 3, and this is indeed a weekly 3 sitting here instead. There's more logic for me that this is a weekly 3 followed by an ABC move down, giving us a slightly higher weekly 5 and a monthly 3. Okay, so not to confuse the matter, I'm going to take these out and put this back in. So if we assume that we've got options for the monthly being this, right, and I'll come back into the weekly in just a second, I'm going to stick, first of all, the Weiss wave. Now, I personally like this as a technique. The quickest thing for me I do is I spot the 3. And therefore, if we assume that this is a 3, this gives us the 2, and this gives us the rally at 1. There's the first piece of logic as to why we could be in a monthly 3 down to 4. However, if we use this as the assumption, then we'd likely to see an A followed by a B followed by a C, which would give us A down, B up, and C back down. Okay, so one way or the other, we've got bearish sentiment on a monthly time frame, even in the best case scenario. If we assume that this 3 hasn't yet been completed, we're going to have to step down to a weekly time frame to give us justification as to where and why this would give us a weekly 5 and ultimately a monthly 3 sitting like this. Okay, so I hope you're following along so far. I've gone into a little bit more detail, as I just said, in terms of the YouTube video, but I wanted to cover this as kind of step 1. So step 2, I'm going to cover the weekly. Now, again, similar logic to what we've just seen with the monthly count. We now have to come in for a secondary count starting from the 2, which would give me some kind of 0 to 1, back down for a 2. Now, I could argue 3, 4, and 5. and I'm going to change this to be, say, orange as a separate color and slightly smaller so we know where we are. And therefore, if we were to assume this being the current weekly count, we'd have, like I said, this followed by this, potentially this, and up we go. That would give us confirmation of the monthly 3 already being in, and now we'd expect to see an A, a B, and a C anyway. So with that being said, we've got bearish sentiment both ways. I don't think there's any other way to explain it currently. We're not really looking massively impulsive to the upside. I think we got this rally and everybody thought, oh, we've missed the bottom, we've missed the bottom. Professional trading isn't about catching bottoms and tops. What you're looking for is the meat in the middle. And I just feel that when we look at this particular move, even if we assume a 2 to 3 on the weekly rather than a monthly, you can clearly see that that's in that channel there, which means we're at a 4 on this assumption, which takes me back then to the monthly Weiss moves overall, that we were actually seeing a non-completed monthly 3 being the best bullish scenario right now. And the more obvious weekly scenario is that we have yet to complete a weekly 4 move overall. Because I'm looking at this and thinking to myself, okay, we've got a relatively small move here, being this one, anything kind of post this. Now, coming back into the weekly, anything post kind of 2018, this level here, I think was just purely hype, technical guys, kind of wannabes, anybody that's not really in the professional level of trading yet. There was less institutional money involved, and the institutional money that was involved, they were kind of dependent on advisors and consultants and so on to actually make this more of a potential technical bet rather than a cryptocurrency investment instrument. So for me, I like to start, the move from kind of 2019, which is technically this one. So although we've got a monthly count there, I'm actually going to take this as my starting point, which means this particular move here would actually give us the 1 up, which we'd see from the low to the high. This would give me my 2. This move up would give me the 3, and therefore we're in a 4. So if we assume that a 5 is yet to come here like this, then ultimately I want to see some confirmation of the weekly 4 being completed. And the fact that we had a relatively low volume up, we've had a relatively low volume up, we've had a relatively low volume up, and we've had this massive, massive move down here, which was probably triggered by this and this, means that we're still actually bearish before we get confirmation to take this long. So I'm not going to put any forecast in terms of the levels down, but ultimately I'd like to see the next red wave complete. Let's see whether or not that takes out this high. And if we do get that and we come down quite a bit deeper or just in parallel with this, then in essence, that will give me more confidence that the 5 wave is due to set off. And I feel at that particular stage, the 5 wave move will only be giving us a mark past the current all-time high. This will give us a weekly 5 like this, weekly 5, which will indeed be the monthly 3. And then we'll get a deeper corrective move back down before going up to the moon, as they say, which will give us then the monthly 5 after the next real corrective pattern. So that's where I am at the moment. I hope this makes a little bit of sense. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I hope this is what it is. So I'm going to leave this one as it is. Like I said, it's only a short one earlier. I'll actually stick the link to the YouTube video in there as well, should you want it. And yeah, I'll speak to you in the next couple of days.